Good evening and welcome to Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host, coming to you from the BNN Live studios in Eggleston Square, Jamaica Plain, where tonight on the Boston Neighborhood Network, well, we'll bring you lots of politics as usual, but tonight focusing on local politics. There's several very interesting races shaping up here in the city of Boston for state rep seats and a state senate seat that has opened up. Tonight, you'll meet two of the candidates running in the Suffolk and Norfolk Senate race, and that encompasses West Roxbury, Roslindale, Hyde Park, and three towns in the suburbs. First up tonight, you'll meet Brad Williams, a Republican running and hoping to make his mark, make a difference this year, somewhat in the Scott Brown mold. And later on, you'll meet Michael Walsh, one of the Democrats running in this race. Also in this race, Representative Michael Rush from West Roxbury. All of that and more tonight on Talk of the Neighborhood. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with Talk of the Neighborhoods. Tonight, local politics this fall, and both the primary elections and general elections. Some very interesting races shaping up here in the city of Boston, not the least of which is an open Senate seat that's came with the decision to retire by Senator Marion Walsh. West Roxbury has drawn three able candidates in this race, one Republican, two Democrats. Tonight you'll meet two of them. And first up in this segment from West Roxbury and making his first run for public office, a Republican in this race, Brad Williams joins us. And Brad, it's so nice to have you here.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there is a history of Republicans winning this seat, but it's not quite ancient history, but it's been a few years. And what makes you think, running this year, that a Republican can win this district? This is a district that has trended Democrat in the past, but you must be seeing something there that perhaps others aren't.
Well, you're right, Joe. This district for 18 years has been held by a Democrat, Senator Walsh. Before that, it was held by a Republican, Chris Lane, from Medfield. Medfield's no longer in the district, of course, right. But it's very hard to get incumbents out of office, as you know, in Massachusetts. But this district looks very good for somebody like myself. I'm a small business owner. I've lived in the district almost 20 years. People always like to say, well, what about Scott Brown? Are you running because of Scott? Well, I actually filed my papers December 4th. Scott was down by 25 points in the polls, I think. But, it's very encouraging when you look at Scott Brown's results because he won Dedham, Norwood, Westwood out in Norfolk County. Mm-hmm. West Roxbury, he won many, many precincts. And he lost more deeper into the city, but he lost by 2 or 3 points. And what that means is all I have to do is flip 800 or 900 votes in this district.
Well, again, this is a district that's a combination of urban, suburban, West Roxbury, Roslindale, Hyde Park, maybe a little slice of Jamaica Plain, but those suburban communities. Are you feeling a little schizophrenic running? It's you know, even though they're neighboring towns, they are different.
Well, Norfolk County obviously has different issues than Suffolk County. And the city, in Suffolk County, of course, we do get city politics as well. I've gotten to know all of the city councilors in my district, John Tobin, Rob Consalvo, John Conley lives in West Roxbury. The city issues are very similar to the Norfolk County issues, I think with one big exception, the Boston schools. And everywhere I go on the Boston side of the district, parents are concerned about school choice, whether it's getting their children into a local school within walking distance of their house, or perhaps also a charter school. Now that issue somewhat disappears out in Dedham, Norwood, and Westwood. They have different types of school issues, funding new schools, building a new school in Dedham, the Avery School, or building the new high school in Norwood. So the issues are different, but you're right, it is a little schizophrenic. And then out in Norfolk County, of course, you have to get to know all the town officials in 3 towns as well.
Well, now, other than the fact that you're the only Republican in the race and there's 2 Democrats, for those that have not known you yet or met you yet or had an opportunity to do so, what is it that you think really sets you apart from the other candidates in this race?
Other than being a Republican, you mean?
Other than being a Republican.
Well, I mean, that alone means that I'm going to vote a lot differently than what we've seen on Beacon Hill for a long time. But I think what has set me apart, and I want to go back to when Marion Walsh almost left her seat early.
That's right. She was in line for a job at one of the authorities, and at the last minute kind of stepped back.
She stepped back, and that's when my campaign actually started. That people were calling me back then saying, Brad, you should run, you should run. My email inbox was filling up, the phone was ringing, and people were saying, Brad, you have some characteristics that this state needs. You are a business person. I have an MBA, Joe. We have a lot of attorneys up there. They're great, but we don't have a lot of business people. And not only am I a business person, I operate an investment firm, but I'm also an investment advisor. And I mention that because I think it means 2 things. One, I actually sit down with people at their kitchen table or in my conference room, and they tell me how hard it is in Massachusetts to pay bills, to save for college, to save for retirement, and what a struggle it's been to find a job if you've lost a job. So that's half of what my vocation is. The other half of the campaign, of course, is I do have the training in finance and investments and running a business to bring that to Beacon Hill. Because I think one problem we have on Beacon Hill is that we don't run it the way we run businesses in the private sector.
And of course, that maybe that wouldn't be so magnified except for the financial crisis facing the country, and of course the revenue crisis, or budgeting crisis, however you want to look at it, that's affecting the Commonwealth. I want to ask you about that in just a few minutes. I want to invite our viewers, if you care to join in. Brad Williams is a businessman from West Roxbury running for the Suffolk and Norfolk Senate District. That encompasses Roslindale, West Roxbury, Hyde Park, a little slice of Jamaica Plain, and some neighboring suburban towns, Dedham, Norwood, Westwood. Here tonight on Talk to the Neighborhoods. If you have a question, comment for Brad Williams, give us a call. The number's right there on the screen. Of course, the financial crisis has affected the state. It's affected everyone. But that all seemed to kind of get lost in the last few weeks of the legislative session that just wrapped up July 31. All anyone was thinking about, talking about, was casino gambling. Now, as it turns out, Senator Walsh voted against it, but I'm wondering what's your take on that? If Brad Williams had been in the Senate, what would you be doing with that issue? Well,
my biggest problem with the casinos aren't casinos themselves. My biggest issue with casinos is that I have a feeling that the legislature is looking for silver bullets to solve some of our fiscal problems in this state, and they look at casinos and say, well, gee, there's $700 or $800 million in new tax money.
Ka-ching.
And right, now we can kick the can down the road for a few more years before we have to make tough, unpopular decisions and reforms. So, I am a free market business person. So casinos, I think, are fine. I know some people debate whether they're morally sound and that kind of thing, but I think at this point they're almost inevitable. But you could also argue that the legislature and the governor we have right now really for 3 years failed to produce. They've been talking about this, Joe, for 3 years now. And then it took an extra session on a Saturday and at the end of this legislative session, and they basically didn't get anywhere with it.
But back to your point, though, about the silver bullet, sort of. So would have you voted for it if you were there, or is that an unfair question?
Well, you have to say which casino bill are we voting for, because we have the governor saying we won't do slots, but yet the studies show that most of the revenue and profit is from the slots. He wants to do destination resorts. I think a mix of both is probably correct. Then we have Senator DeLeo playing favorites and trying to get his district some casinos. So we have a lot of powerful forces working here. Governor doesn't want the slots. We have a speaker who wants something for his district. And probably, my guess is that some mix of the two is where we'll end up. And maybe we'll need to see some change there to actually get it done.
It might be on your plate if you get elected. Again, Brad Williams is a businessman, an investment advisor by day, running a hard campaign every night for the Suffolk and Norfolk Senate race. If you haven't picked up on this, an open seat, probably the most interesting Senate race, one of several that we're following here on Talk of the Neighborhoods as we continue with our election 2010 coverage. Just a program note, BNN, Talk of the Neighborhoods, will be hosting once again an primary election night show on September 14th. So if you're interested in the outcome of some of the primary races, please join us 8:30 to 10:30 on Tuesday, September 14th. Brad, talking about the other issues, though, are you connecting? Is there a different? We saw in the Scott Brown Martha Coakley race some dynamic taking hold. Some people said it was an aberration. Others say it's the sign of things to come and changes. What's the reaction? And you've been talking about, I'm guessing, budget issues, taxes. What is it that, when you go up there, you plan to make your priority?
Well, I think you're right. Scott Brown was great for those of us who supported him. I actively supported Scott Brown, organized standouts, and organized distribution of bumper stickers and literature, and that was great. But that's 6 months ago. In my world right now, that's ancient history. But I think the message from Scott Brown was very important, and still is, that people wanted change. They wanted a little bit more accountability. They wanted to feel that they were in control. And what people saw in Washington, Joe, in the lack of control they felt about what was happening in Washington, I would argue we've already had in Massachusetts for 15 years. We've had one party largely in control. Even when we've had a Republican governor, they've been handcuffed with, they can't get a veto sustained in the Senate. We've had no checks and balances. And that brings us to where we are today, which I do think is one of my strengths, which is the fiscal position of our state budget is in dire straits. For 2 or 3 years now, we have failed to make needed significant reforms, and we have a state budget that, everybody I talk to, they all know that if we don't make changes, what's going to happen in the spring? It has to be more tax increases.